Good evening and welcome to Vietnam News, where East meets West. I'm Peter. We've got a packed lineup for you today. From a deadly earthquake shaking the Philippines to the aftermath of Storm Bualoi in Vietnam. And if you thought running a red light was just a fine, think again. You might be scrubbing the streets instead. We'll also take a look at why Vietnam's home prices just won't stop climbing. A possible big change that could let foreign students work part-time for the very first time. And finally, a massive sea reclamation project that's reshaping the future of Gunza.
Hello everyone, Scott here with Vietnam News, where East meets West. We're starting off the news with a major story out of the Philippines. A powerful earthquake has struck, leaving behind loss, devastation, and an urgent humanitarian crisis. Let's take a closer look at what's happening on the ground. A powerful earthquake has shaken the Philippines, leaving behind devastation, grief, and overwhelming pressure on hospitals. Tonight, we look at how this disaster is unfolding, why it's hitting so hard, and what it means for people both in the region and beyond. The quake struck the southern Philippines earlier this week, measuring a severe magnitude that toppled buildings, cut off power, and caused widespread panic. So far, the death toll has climbed to nearly 60 people, with hundreds more injured, many so seriously that local hospitals are struggling to keep up. Medical facilities in affected provinces are now stretched to their breaking point. Doctors and nurses are working around the clock, treating crush injuries, broken bones, and trauma. Many hospitals have been forced to use hallways and temporary tents to handle the sheer number of patients coming through their doors. Supplies of blood and medicine are already running low. Rescue operations continue, with teams pulling survivors from collapsed homes and businesses. Thousands of residents have been displaced, taking shelter in evacuation centers or with relatives, uncertain when or if they'll be able to return home. The Philippines is no stranger to natural disasters. Sitting on the so-called Ring of Fire, the country is one of the most earthquake-prone nations in the world. Quakes of this magnitude can trigger landslides in mountainous areas and make infrastructure damage worse in regions already vulnerable due to weaker construction standards. For many Filipinos, the quake also stirs painful memories of past disasters. In 2013, a massive earthquake struck the central island of Bohol, killing more than 200 people. And just a few years ago, Mindanao faced another series of destructive tremors. Each event leaves scars, not only on the land, but also on the collective psyche of communities, who know it may only be a matter of time before another one strikes. Hospitals in rural provinces often lack advanced facilities, which is why larger cities like Davao and Cagayan de Oro are being asked to take in patients. But that comes with challenges, transporting the injured over damaged roads and through areas still at risk from aftershocks. The immediate focus is search and rescue, but the long-term challenges will be just as daunting. Tens of thousands of families face rebuilding their lives, homes, and businesses. Aid organizations, both domestic and international, are mobilizing to provide food, clean water, and temporary shelter. For the Philippine government, this disaster underscores a recurring question. How can the country strengthen its resilience to natural calamities? Calls are growing for stricter building codes, more disaster-resistant housing, and better emergency preparedness in schools and communities. For neighboring countries in Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, the earthquake is a sobering reminder of the shared vulnerability in the region. From typhoons to quakes to floods, no nation in this part of the world is immune. Expats living in the Philippines are also facing difficult choices, whether to stay and support rebuilding efforts or to relocate until conditions stabilize. What happens next depends on how quickly aid can reach the most affected areas and whether aftershocks complicate recovery. But one thing is clear. Communities across the Philippines are once again showing resilience, with neighbors helping neighbors, and volunteers stepping up in the absence of sufficient resources. The quake in the Philippines is a tragedy measured not just in numbers, but in human stories. Families torn apart, communities struggling to rebuild, and a nation once again confronting the harsh reality of life along the Ring of Fire. What do you think should be the top priority in disaster response? Immediate rescue, medical support, or long-term rebuilding? Share your thoughts in the comments. And let's open up the conversation. From Vietnam News, we'll continue to follow this story and others shaping our region, where East meets West. This is our next story tonight. Storm Bualoi has struck hard across northern and central Vietnam, leaving behind a trail of destruction, heartbreak, and urgent recovery efforts. When a storm tears through towns, uproots lives, and pushes entire landscapes to the edge, the headlines tell only part of the story. Tonight, we explore Storm Bualoi's toll, nearly 30 lives lost, damage in the hundreds of millions, and a long road ahead for affected communities. In the wake of Storm Bualoi and its accompanying floods, landslides, and thunderous weather, 29 people have lost their lives, and 22 remain missing. Many more are injured or displaced. The human cost is steep. Economic losses are estimated at more than 8.016 trillion Vietnam dong, around $303 million. The damage is widespread. 91 houses were completely destroyed, and over 145,000 homes were damaged or had roofs torn off. In the education sector, 1,076 schools were affected. Agricultural losses include destruction of over 34,000 hectares of rice and crops, and nearly 10,000 hectares of aquaculture wiped out. Livestock impacts: 1,105 cattle lost, and around 179,000 poultry killed or swept away. Infrastructure was battered. Over 6,400 electricity poles damaged, causing power outages for nearly 2.7 million households. Transportation was heavily disrupted. 42 flights canceled, 51 delayed, across airports in Da Nang, Phu Bai, Dong Hoi, and Tho Suan. Roads, bridges, and embankments were damaged. 1,272 points reported issues across multiple provinces. Authorities had managed to restore electricity to 1.4 million households by Wednesday morning, with full reconnection in provinces like Quang Tri expected by October 6th in some areas. In Hanoi, heavy rains tied to the storm caused flooding on 65 streets, with water depths ranging from 20 centimeters up to more than 1 meter. Schools in some districts were forced to close for safety. Vietnam frequently faces severe storms during its rainy seasons, but each one tests readiness, resilience, and response anew. The path of Bualoi cut through some of the country's most vulnerable central and northern provinces, regions already challenged by terrain, infrastructure limits, and agricultural dependency. Natural disaster management in Vietnam combines central coordination with local capacity. In places where early warning systems, evacuation plans, or infrastructure are weaker, communities suffer more. In addition, climate change is intensifying storms, making megastorms more frequent and more brutal. The agricultural sector is especially vulnerable. Rural communities depend heavily on rice cultivation, fisheries, and livestock, all of which are threatened by flooding and erosion. Damage to schools means disruptions in education just when stability matters most. For international observers, Bualoi's effects put into sharp relief how climate change meets development challenges. Even moderate economic growth can be set back by a strong storm. The alignment of infrastructure, disaster planning, insurance or compensation mechanisms, and resilient design matters more than ever. In the short term, relief and recovery will demand massive effort. Restoring power, clearing debris, delivering food, water, medical aid, and temporary shelter. repairing damaged roads and reconnecting isolated communities will be a priority. The education system will need to recover quickly, rebuilding damaged schools, ensuring students can return to class, and offering support to affected families. In agriculture, replanting, restocking livestock, and restoring aquaculture sites will take months, sometimes years. Government support and aid will likely be crucial. Infrastructure resilience will become a louder call. How can drainage, embankments, power systems, and road networks be built to withstand stronger storms? In many affected provinces, that question is already urgent. The economic losses, though staggering, are only part of the story. The human cost, the interrupted lives, and the resilience required are matters that take years to measure fully. Storm Bualoi has left scars across homes, fields, and hearts, and the recovery is only just beginning. In your view, should recovery aid focus most on rebuilding infrastructure, supporting farmers, or investing in stronger early warning systems? Share your thoughts in the comments below. From Vietnam News, we'll stay on this story and others shaping our region, where East meets West. Our next story tonight, and it hits close to home for every motorbike rider and driver in HCMC. Run a red light here, and soon you might be sweeping the sidewalks. Imagine blowing a red light. Instead of a fine, you're given a broom to clean streets. That's the bold new proposal on the table in Ho Chi Minh City, as pressure builds to curb traffic violations and make roads safer. Tonight, we'll walk you through what's changing, why it matters, and how it could affect daily commuters. Ho Chi Minh City plans to pair fines with community service for certain traffic violations, including running a red light. Offenders could be assigned to tasks like street cleaning or supporting public facilities, in addition to, or sometimes instead of, paying a monetary penalty. This idea stems from a directive by Deputy Prime Minister Tran Hong Ha, pushing local authorities to rethink enforcement methods amid growing concern over road safety. City police are working with other departments to propose legal amendments so that community service can be formally recognized under Vietnam's administrative law, something that currently does not exist. To ramp up deterrence, the city is also increasing scrutiny on violations that often lead to serious accidents: drunk driving, speeding, and reckless behavior at intersections. Alongside these changes, the Department of Construction is drafting a traffic safety city plan. The vision includes pushing residents toward public transportation, promoting greener vehicles, and strengthening traffic infrastructure. One headline change: the fine for running a red light has jumped dramatically. What used to cost between 3 to 5 million has now reached 18 to 20 million Vietnam dong, starting in 2025. Ho Chi Minh City now hosts over 13 million vehicles after merging with Binh Duong and Ba Ria Vung Tau. In the first 9 months of this year alone, the city recorded 1,328 traffic accidents, with 666 fatalities and 71 serious injuries. That marks a drop in accidents relative to last year, but the numbers remain sobering. Traffic enforcement is a perennial challenge in Vietnam's big cities. With so many motorbikes and dense urban congestion, violations like running red lights are common, often resulting in minor collisions or worse. Monetary fines have always been the main tool against offenders, but their deterrent effect is limited, especially for repeat violators or when enforcement is inconsistent. The idea of adding community service is borrowed from other countries seeking alternatives that reinforce public responsibility. In the global context, many nations use community service as a secondary or alternative punishment, letting offenders give back to the community rather than simply paying fines. Vietnam's proposal is an experiment in blending traditional punitive systems with civic accountability. In HCMC, the stakes are high. Rapid growth, Infrastructure lag and chaotic intersections mean that any measure that helps reduce accidents could save lives. But success hinges on enforcement consistency, legal backing, and public buy-in. If the proposal becomes law, many drivers and riders will face a stark choice: pay a steep fine or do the work. That could make road safety feel more personal. Breaking a law will carry immediate public service consequences. Municipal departments will need to coordinate on staffing, assignment of tasks, monitoring fairness, and preventing abuse. They'll also have to determine exactly which violations trigger community service and the duration or type of work required. For daily commuters, the proposal will change risk calculation. Some may behave more cautiously, especially near traffic lights, but others might just see it as another cost of breaking rules. From a national perspective, if Ho Chi Minh City's experiment works, it may serve as a model for other cities across Vietnam, a new enforcement paradigm combining accountability and rehabilitation. Expats and international observers will be watching. Does this represent a step toward more civic responsibility, or just a tougher enforcement regime? Could it evolve into more community-driven urban programs? Ho Chi Minh City's plan to make red light runners scrub sidewalks is bold, symbolic, and aimed at more than just fines. Would you rather face a fine or community service if you broke a traffic rule? Drop your thoughts in the comments. For our fourth story, we turn to the housing market, an issue that's touching nearly everyone. Home prices in Vietnam have been climbing relentlessly. What's driving this surge? And what does it mean for ordinary people trying to buy a home? Let's dive in. In recent years, housing costs in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City have shattered records. Apartments now fetch tens of millions of dong per square meter. But when supply is tight and demand is ever growing, what's fueling this upward spiral? Tonight, we unpack the forces pushing Vietnam's real estate market upward and explore who's getting squeezed along the way. Across Vietnam's major cities, property prices have been rising at breakneck speed. In Hanoi, the average apartment now goes for around 80 million Vietnam dong per square meter, about 33% higher than a year ago. Meanwhile, in Ho Chi Minh City, similar units are reaching 89 million Vietnam dong per square meter. Townhouses and single-family homes in more desirable districts are selling even higher, often between 100 million and 200 million Vietnam dong per square meter in both cities. Analysts point to several main drivers: soaring land costs, rising prices of materials and labor, and expensive financing. Land, in particular, plays a massive role in the final cost. Developers often face delays in securing project approvals and permits. Those delays add cost over time. Inflation, regulatory changes, interest on borrowed capital that ultimately get passed on to buyers. Some critics also blame developers' high profit expectations. When many projects are positioned in premium segments, average pricing gets pulled upward across the board. Authorities and economists have floated policy fixes, from streamlining administrative and land procedures to offering incentives and even considering taxes on vacant homes. To understand why this is hitting hard now, we have to look at structural pressures in Vietnam's real estate landscape. Firstly, land is scarce. In dense metropolitan areas, suitable land parcels are increasingly hard to find. When a plot becomes available, competition is fierce, which pushes up the acquisition cost well before development begins. Secondly, material and labor inflation has been persistent. The cost of cement, steel, glass, and construction labor has steadily climbed. That's true not just in Vietnam, but globally. Supply chain disruptions, energy costs, and raw material scarcity feed into local projects. Thirdly, regulations and permit delays are a constant bottleneck. Many developers say they spend years waiting for approvals or facing changing rules mid-process, which erodes margins and raises risk. Fourth, there's strong buyer demand, not just for homes to live in, but for property as a store of value. As returns in other asset classes fluctuate, real estate remains a safe harbor for many Vietnamese investors. And for younger people or first-time buyers, supply in affordable or mid-range segments is still limited. Developers often favor higher margin projects. Finally, this is not only a domestic phenomenon. Foreign investment, capital flows, and institutional demand also ripple into these markets. While the focus is largely on local dynamics, the broader international context can't be ignored. For households, the rising prices are more than just numbers. They're a barrier. Many middle-income families now find themselves priced out of the market. Even with mortgages and favorable credit, the burden of down payments, debt service, and risk looms large. Government and regulators are under increasing pressure. Some voices, including the Prime Minister, are calling for cooling measures, speeding up housing supply, limiting speculation, and expanding social and affordable housing. If procedures are reformed and delayed projects can be activated, supply could rise, which might help moderate price growth. But that's a long road. Another key question: will developers adjust profit expectations and shift more attention to mid-tier and affordable segments? For expats and international observers, rising home prices highlight the challenges of urbanization, inflationary pressures, and capital allocation in growing economies. What happens next depends on coordination. Real estate policy, financial sector regulation, land administration, and consumer protection must align if this trend is to be tempered. Vietnam's sky-high home prices reflect deep structural issues, not just for property developers, but for citizens trying to find a place to live. Which do you believe should be the priority? Accelerating affordable housing projects, regulating speculative investment, or reforming land and permit systems? Share your view in the comments below. Next, we turn to education and immigration. Vietnam may soon allow foreign students to work part-time, a shift that could change the experience of thousands of international scholars studying here. Imagine being a foreign student in Vietnam. You're juggling tuition, rent, daily expenses, and cultural adjustment. Now imagine having the legal option to work up to 20 hours a week. That's what's on the table in a new draft resolution, a big change from Vietnam's current rules. Today we break down what's happening, who stands to benefit, and what challenges remain. Under a draft resolution submitted to the National Assembly, the Ministry of Education and Training has proposed allowing foreign students to work part-time, capped at 20 hours per week during school terms. Currently, no clear rules exist for how many hours international students can legally work in. The proposal aims to align Vietnam with global norms. In many countries like the UK, the US, and New Zealand, international students already have limited work rights during academic terms. As of the end of 2024, nearly 22,000 international students were enrolled in Vietnam, the highest number in 9 years. Most come from neighboring countries like Laos and Cambodia. Many are enrolled at universities in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, or in major technical and economic institutions. The draft also suggests granting 5-year visa and work permit exemptions to foreign experts and scientists with doctoral degrees working at Vietnamese universities and colleges. This would be a notable shift. Right now, foreign students in Vietnam often face restrictions or unclear legal frameworks when seeking work. Many countries use part-time permissions as a way to attract global talent, make study more livable, and retain graduates. For Vietnam, supporting foreign students with legal work rights could help attract more talent, raise university competitiveness, and encourage cultural exchange. On the flip side, there may be worries about job competition, regulation, monitoring, and ensuring that student work does not undermine academic priorities. In Southeast Asia, several nations operate under similar models, balancing student rights, labor needs, and academic integrity. Vietnam is trying to catch up. For students from Cambodia, Laos, China, or further afield, the possibility to earn locally could ease financial burdens and deepen ties to the country they choose to study in. If passed, this change could improve the daily lives of many foreign students, giving them legal means to support part of their living costs, gain real work experience in Vietnam, and build connections with local companies. Universities would need to adapt. Career centers, job matching services, and collaboration with businesses could become more important. Vietnamese firms might benefit from tapping into a more diverse, skilled international student workforce. However, implementation will be key, defining which types of work are allowed, ensuring student hours don't interfere with studies, and creating oversight to prevent abuse. Also, whether the cap of 20 hours remains or is adjusted will matter. For Vietnamese students and citizens, this move could raise questions. Will it increase competition in part-time jobs? Will foreign students become seen as labor resource rather than just learners? International observers and prospective students will be watching closely. How Vietnam handles the transition could influence its reputation as a destination for higher education. Vietnam allowing foreign students to work part-time would be a milestone, a bridge between education and opportunity, but one full of trade-offs and complexities. Do you think allowing 20 hours of work per week is fair, or should it be higher? Or should stricter limits apply? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Wrapping up our night's reports, we turn to one of the most ambitious urban projects underway in Ho Chi Minh City, the Con Ser Sea Reclamation Development. 6 months in, drone photos show the sheer scale of what's being built and raise big questions about land, environment, and vision. Imagine turning coastal seas into city blocks, parks, and lakes. That's exactly what's happening in Con Ser. Hundreds of barges pumping sand, shaping the coastline, and laying the foundations for what might become one of the region's most dramatic transformations. But is this dream worth its environmental and social price? Vingroup broke ground on April 19, 2025, for the Con Ser Sea Reclamation Tourism Urban Project, known as Vinhome's Green Paradise. The project spans 2,870 hectares and carries a total estimated investment of over 217 trillion Vietnam dong, around $8.5 billion. Drone images from September 2025 show a vast sand-filling zone, with ships continuously supplying material and initial land shapes beginning to emerge. The reclaimed land is being prepared in phases from the coastline inward, and visible zones already outline future residential and recreational areas. In an earlier city decision, the Ho Chi Minh City People's Committee approved land valued at over 27.3 trillion Vietnam dong for the project. The plan envisions the area eventually housing 228,560 residents and welcoming 8.9 million tourists annually. The development is planned over 11 years, with a 50-year operational period once fully built. Vietnam's coastline has long been eyed for urban expansion, and sea reclamation is part of a global trend in land-scarce, fast-growing cities. But such initiatives carry risks: ecological disruption, shifting sediment flows, and impacts on fisheries and mangroves. Con Ser itself lies on the city's southeastern border, once primarily green and water-based, with mangrove forests and coastal ecosystems. Turning that into high-density urban space represents both opportunity and tension. The scale of investment also reflects confidence in HCMC's growth trajectory, real estate demand, and tourism potential. For Vingroup, this is a signature project, one to define the company's footprint in urban development for decades to come. Internationally, observers might compare this to mega reclamation projects in places like Dubai or Singapore's land expansion. The question is whether the social and environmental costs are being adequately weighed. In the short term, construction challenges loom: sand sourcing, settling soil, hydrodynamic impacts, how water moves, and ensuring stability. These are enormous engineering tasks. Local residents, especially fishing communities, may face displacement or changes in livelihoods due to coastline changes. Environmental groups will likely monitor mangroves, biodiversity, and water quality. From a city planning perspective, the success of Kanzia could reshape HCMC's urban geography. It could relieve pressure on central districts, offer new zones for housing, and create tourism hubs. But if poorly managed, it risks becoming another coastal development that fails to harmonize with nature. For investors and developers, this may be a signal of confidence in HCMC's expansion outward. For international parties, it's a test case how Southeast Asian cities adapt to the pressures of growth, real estate demand, and sustainable planning. What comes next depends on regulatory approval, continued funding, environmental impact assessments, and the maintenance of political will. And that brings us to the end of tonight's news roundup. We've covered a lot of ground, from the powerful impact of Storm Bualoi and its heavy toll, to the unrelenting rise in Vietnam's housing prices, and the government's potential move to let foreign students work part-time for the very first time. We also saw Ho Chi Minh City's creative new approach to traffic violations, and wrapped with a close look at the bold yet controversial sea reclamation project in Kanzia. Taken together, these stories highlight just how dynamic life in Vietnam and Southeast Asia is right now. Natural disasters continue to test resilience. The economy pushes opportunities and challenges in equal measure, and cities are redefining themselves at a rapid pace. For locals, expats, and those watching from abroad, it's a reminder of how interconnected these issues really are. Housing, education, environment, and governance all shaping the path forward. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which story stood out to you the most tonight, and why? Was it the resilience needed after the storm, the tough realities of the housing market, or maybe the bold vision for Gunzi's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We always enjoy hearing your perspective and building a conversation around these issues. Thanks so much for spending your evening with us here at Vietnam News, where East meets West. We'll be back with more stories that matter. So until then, stay safe, stay curious, and stay connected.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. I'm Peter, and from all of us here at Vietnam News, thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next report.